the Samsung Odyssey G7 versus the Neo G7. Hi friends and welcome to Viktors Reality. Today I have another versus video showcasing 8 zones versus 1,196 local dimming zones with a variety of scenes, including CupHead and Street Fighter. Here friends, we have the G7 on the left versus the Neo G7 on the right. So getting right into it. What we're seeing here is the Panasonic Automotive LCD contrast ratio of 800:1. I specifically picked this scene to showcase how mini LED technology can dim and brighten where it needs to, while a standard IPS or VA cannot. So let me guide you on what we're seeing, so you can see the panel differences to help you make that awesome buying decision. Right here friends, you can see 800:1, 1,000,000:1, and 10,000:1. And to give you some context on the picture presets, both are on custom, and that specific preset, among others, lets you change the black equalizer. That's an amazing option on many VA and IPS monitors. Black equalizer, not to confuse with dark stabilizer. With black equalizer, you can change the contrast levels, give you more or less shadow detail, or enhance the overall contrast of a certain scene. Both are on black equalizer 13, and what I can see here easily is that the G7 is crushed. The 800:1 to 10,000:1 almost looks the same, while in the middle the 1,000,000:1 looks totally crushed. It looks amazing at first glance, but when you see the quality of the Neo G7's mini LEDs be able to give you that information that the scene is trying to show you, the 800:1 looks exactly like that, a washed out low contrast image. That's how the contrast ratio works. The 10,000:1 looks better, and then of course the 1,000,000:1, which is beautiful on OLEDs, still on mini LED looks amazing. While the G7 with its 8 zones VA technology looks amazing, the mini LED VA brightness power of certain highlights just take it to the next level. This scene right here friends is the proof to show you the differences between standard VA with 8 zones versus 1,196 local dimming zones on the Neo G7 and Neo G8. Look at the LCD panel friends, the Neo G7 is the winner, and it looks much more realistic. It looks what a 800:1 contrast ratio on a Panasonic Automotive LCD would look like. It doesn't look like an OLED. LCD on cars do not look like OLEDs if they're basically LCD, like it's stating here. The G7 is crushing everything. While looking beautiful, it's unrealistic. So the information is not there because the panel cannot dim itself like the mini LED. If the VA panel on the G7 brightened itself to give you that 800:1 contrast ratio, the whole scene would brighten and it would look washed. The algorithm of the monitor knows when to brighten and when not, or how bright it can get for a certain scene, because it cannot crush the whole image. So unfortunately, it cannot dim certain parts of the video to give you that true information of what the scene is trying to give you. The Neo G7 for the win, and this is the amazing technology you get with mini LEDs from Samsung. So the Neo G7 is amazing with its mini LED technology. Now this is where things really get interesting. As you can see, they both have a white box, and the G7 looks to be brighter because the ABL now, unfortunately, is kicking in with the Neo G7. Just give it a couple of seconds and you will see the ABL kick in. The Neo G7 looks to be a tad less bright. It starts off beautifully, but the OG G7 now doesn't have to dim itself. And from what I'm seeing here friends, I don't know how the camera is going to pick up this specific scene, but in the rest of the video you will see when there are images semi like this and the G7 doesn't have to worry about local dimming zones or zones whatsoever. It gives you that impact that the Neo G7 still cannot provide when it's full screen, and you'll see that later in the video. This is just one example. From what I'm seeing, the G7 is a tad brighter, but only in this specific scene. We're going to be raising the ISO at various points in this video, so keep a lookout for the on-screen display so you can see what we're doing here. Here we're going to see the zones at work. On the G7, the zone on the left and on the right are turned off, while everything else is on. They're thick zones, right? They're 8 in a 32-inch size. What do you expect? While the mini LED Neo G7 is black, and I don't see any blooming. The mini LED algorithm is really controlled and gives you that amazing impactful brightness. This is an SDR mode friends, and it really does look HDR-ish. I would say easily the Neo G7 for the win. And again friends, this will pertain to the G6 and G7. The G6 is the successor to the G7. That's how Samsung's doing it. So if you're considering getting a G6 or Neo G7, this is exactly what you're going to be seeing. Now we have some fireworks going on. You can see with the raised ISO, the G7's VA contrast is apparent, it's showing itself because it can't dim the whole area, while the mini LED power of the Neo G7 takes the win. Looks much more vibrant. That's the power of 1,196 local dimming zone friends. You can't beat it, and it's amazing that we're finally getting it on monitors. Now I have here the Sony Vegas demo. This scene right here has the most impact to show you the true differences of mini LED versus VA. Look at that tower. Look at the local dimming. Nothing needs to be explained. You can see with your own eyes. It's a drastic difference. The experience of watching movies and gaming is enhanced tenfold with the Neo G7. Now this is an interesting video, friends. This is VA technology, 8 zones versus 1196. It's easily apparent here, and this is with a raised ISO. Look at that deep contrast on the Neo G7. Everything is brighter. Everything has a much better impact, showing you the clarity, the brightness, power, and so you can see where the zones are coming from. That's what you're going to be getting. Both are super bright and beautiful. There's just no denying mini LED is the winner. Now in reality, everything that you see here is going to be clearer. This is with a raised ISO, so I'm just showing you the brightness potential of each monitor. The G7 can't get brighter. The mini LED is super bright, showing you the differences of mini LED technology. The Neo G7 is black, while the G7, in a scene like this, is a tad grayish. It's not washed or anything, but it's a tad gray. And when you see scenes like this with the tower, there's just no denying the contrast, enhancement, the beautiness, the pop, the visual win of mini LED technology. This is my Alienware Halloween demo. I'm gonna fast forward it a bit so you can see, but every 10 seconds I'm gonna be raising the ISO a notch, showing how mini LED retains the black inkiness of the image, while the G7 just doesn't have the zones and cannot dim in those areas because it's a wide dimming zone, so it cannot dim. In other words, you would see 2 dark zones next to the Alienware logo of the stand. It's not even dimmed because they're so thick, the monitor knows you cannot dim that area. And other things are bleeding into the image, so it stays lit. While the Neo G7 just looks amazing, and just the contrast is just easily, again friends, the winner. Now going with my staycation music video, look at her shadow detail of her hair, her face. She looks beautiful. She looks amazing with that color. The shadow detail wins on the Neo G7. This is an amazing scene because the brightness is there on both panels. That shine that she has on her dress looks amazing, and it does look a tad clearer on the Neo G7. I'm just more impressed with the shadow detail. These dimming zones can lessen or brighten where it needs to, and it just gives you a much more overall realistic image. Now this is a great scene to show, friends. This is my Icebox Radio, The Woods Scary Stories audio drama. The Icebox Radio Theater creates amazing horror audio dramas, so if you're into that, check out my channel playlist, or check out the Icebox Radio Theater, where I work with the Icebox Radio team to visualize their stories and bring them to life to give you that awesome audio experience. So check it out if you're interested, the Icebox Radio Theater YouTube channel, and you can check out my channel playlist. Look at the differences between the G7 and the Neo G7. This is what you're going to get with mini LED technology. A brighter image, but look at the contrast, look at the black areas of the highway, the night sky. You just can't deny it, friends. Look at that. That is an amazing picture, where in the woods they're driving by and they see a phone call from this cabin. It's really scary. Now with this story, The Tiny Door, a theater director enters the music hall's basement, only to find a scary surprise. But look at that contrast. Look at the black levels on the Neo G7 versus the regular OG G7. It's night and day, friends. If you're thinking about getting the G6, or you already have a G7, the true upgrade is the Neo G7 or Neo G8. This is what you get, friends. Mini LED technology at its finest. It is a sight to behold. Now this is with a raised ISO. If you're normally watching the G6 or G7, it's gonna look beautiful. It's gonna look amazing. And just to showcase, this is me lowering the ISO. Now the camera can't capture the total dynamic detail of both monitors with true to life contrast, as it's impossible because one is brighter than the other. It's easier to do this in an ambient lit room, but I'm showcasing here a dark setting. This is more or less what you're gonna see. The Icebox Radio Theater logo is a tad too bright. It doesn't really look like that in real life. But black is black. The zones turn off completely. While on the G7 or G6, that is what I would consider a true to life VA technology experience. Now if we don't worry about the contrast levels, and I lower the ISO, so check this out. It's gonna get really bright. I would say a brightness test. And yes, I would say the Neo G7 does get brighter when there's fast transitions, brightness scenes. Though I would say the true power of the Neo G7 and Neo G8 is in the SDR and HDR highlights. When there's a small window, when there's a flash, when there's a moving object in a very contrasty scene, nothing beats the Neo G7 and Neo G8 today in the monitor market. Not OLED, not a QD OLED, nothing. It's just so impactful, so bright, it's just amazing. We went from dark to light. You can see the Neo G7 can hold its own. It's bright enough, and there's more shadow detail in the trees. I'm sure you can see what I'm seeing, friends. There is more shadow detail, more clarity on the Neo G7 versus the OG G7. Remember, if we raise the black equalizer or lower it, we would get that issue where we would wash out the picture or make it too contrasty. Both on 13, mini LED is showing its power. This is another scene with the trees. Look how much more shadow detail you can see on the Neo G7. And it's brighter. I would say this is about a 40% screen ratio. The top is brighter on the Neo G7, and the Neos can do that. It's just that in a white full screen window, you can't match the brightness power of the OG G7. Now when we go to full screen brightness, example, like the logo of CupHead, it looks evenly matched. I would even say the Neo G7 looks to be winning here. But moving on over to actual gameplay, the G7 is crushing it a bit, but it looks amazing. It looks really, really good. The G6 and G7 will look beautiful. But look what happens here when we go into actual gameplay. Right away, the ABL kicks in, and the G7 on the left is brighter. I've seen this time and time again on the Neo G7 and Neo G8, friends. There's nothing we can do. This is just how this technology works. But once we get out of that white area, things normalize a bit. And now you can see they look equal in brightness. And now the G7 looks to be crushing it a bit with all the shadow detail. Look at that. It's a very contrasty image, but it's a little muddy versus the Neo G7. You can always tailor this, friends, to your liking. This again is on custom preset with a black equalizer of 13. I would say the Neo G7 or 8 should never go past 15, but never under 8. So mess around with those settings if you have these monitors, the Neo G7 and Neo G8. And if you're on the OG G7 or G6, try a black equalizer of 10 to 12. That's my perfect setting, because any higher, you're going to get a crushed image like you're seeing here, and any lower, you're going to get a washed out image. But do what you got to do, friends. Hey, I get you. You might need to see that shadow in Warzone 2.0. So in order to see the shadow detail, you're going to have to lower it a little bit more. But finishing this section with CupHead, you can see both look amazing. You can really see the mini LED power here, friends. It looks clear, it's bright. Everything looks equal, but you can see the shadow detail here on the Neo G7 wins, and it gives you that brightness and that contrast that you expect from an amazing monitor. Now going to Street Fighter, I am going to slow it down as I do want you to see this intro, but I'm going to replay it and slow it down again. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Yes, friends, this is what happens. Full screen power on the Neo G7 and Neo G8 still cannot match other monitors. When you're seeing the Street Fighter Alpha logo, friends, this is what happens. The G7 has impact brightness, full screen impact brightness, same as the Gigabyte M28U, same as the Aorus FE43U, the Sony M9, the LG 32GQ 850 and 950. Everything would look like the one on the left, while the Neo G7, Neo G8, and any OLED or QD OLED monitor would look like the one on the right. The ABL kicks in, the automatic brightness limiter, to protect the screen. All zones turned on cannot achieve the brightness as you're seeing here, like the one on the left. A perfect example of why you would like to have a higher brightness full screen window, because you don't want to see things like this. This annoys me, for sure. And it's not just in logos like this. This can happen in some gaming. And again, friends, I'm going to show you that right now. This is a perfect game to showcase. That's why I love me some super bright, impactful image monitors. Of course, you can always tailor down the brightness a bit if it's too bright. But look at this amazing picture. It's night and day. You're going to see here, friends, the Neo G7 on the right looks brighter in this section right here. When the zones are tight and they're smaller, look at that brightness difference. The Neo G7, with those highlights like I've said, friends, is the best of the two. You can see when the transition happens, that's when the mini LEDs is changing and turning on or off or brightening itself. So the transition is super fast on the Neos. It's the full widescreen window. The ABL kicks in to protect the monitor. Now I would prefer a tad bit brighter, but it is what it is, and that's what we got to deal with. Now when there's not that much white on the screen, you can see right here everything is evenly matched. There is no shadow detail on the Neo G7, but the OG G7 and the G6 will look beautiful, are so similar, with the G6 introducing smart features and a remote control. But the true technological upgrade is the Neo line. The Neo G7, Neo G8, mini LED power showcased here to help you make that awesome buying decision. There you have it, friends. The Samsung Odyssey G7 versus Neo G7. My Neo G7 and Neo G8 are the best mini LED monitors on the market today for the amazing SDR peak highlights that you can't get anywhere else. Nothing is better. And the true HDR power that only mini LED can provide. Friends, these are amazing monitors. If you are interested in any of these monitors, please use the affiliate links down below as it helps me tremendously bring technology to you faster than ever. Keep a lookout on my community post as I always post sale prices. Never pay full price, friends, so you can save some money. Friends, if you did find this video helpful, please hit that like button so more people can see it to help them make that awesome buying decision. Consider subscribing if you want more information on the Samsung Odyssey Neo lineup of monitors, among breaking news on the whole range of monitors coming out in the near future. I truly appreciate your time. Thanks for watching, friends. Stay safe out there. I'll see you guys next time.